I have another question which is somewhat related. So, what is cellular senescence and why is it so important?
Yeah, definitely. Whenever we talk about aging, a lot of times the best way to classify aging is via what we call these hallmarks of aging, and cellular senescence is definitively one of those hallmarks. Some people might call cellular senescence sort of zombie cells. I don't love that term, but essentially, what these cells are cells that essentially pause, and these cells might pause for a variety of reasons. But essentially they stay alive, but they don't necessarily replicate. So they're just sort of in this suspended stage. And when they're in this stage, they don't function like they normally would. One of the biggest changes is that they start to create a lot of inflammation. And as most people know, chronic inflammation is one of the worst things you can have for your body, not even just for aging, but even for disease. But they call this process inflammaging. And so that's a really negative process because as we get older, these cells start to accumulate into very high degrees. And so one of the biggest, I would say, anti-aging therapeutic interventions that people think are in development right now are ways to get rid of those cells, to make sure that they stop from just being suspended and your body can sort of get rid of them. And autophagy, as we mentioned, sort of those periods of fasting is one of the ways that people think you can do that by encouraging the body to break down its own cells to repurpose them for new fuel or new creation. And another way to do it is via these interventional drugs called senolytics. And by doing so, you can reduce a lot of different disease outcomes, things like osteoarthritis, even gray hair. And some of the studies they've done in mice, you can see these sort of old, frail, small mice, be treated with these products, and then all of a sudden they're more muscular. Their fur is now dark again. It's no longer gray. It's thicker. They have better vision. They have more energy, and so it can affect multiple levels in this process. But it's one of those hallmarks of aging is this accumulation of cells that we absolutely want to prevent. And if we can't prevent it, we definitely want to get rid of.
Yeah, by the way, I would love to have some of that natural product to get with the gray taken care of out of my hair. I'm getting some. Um, what about telomere length? So I hear a lot about telomere length, and what role does it play in all of this?
Yeah, so telomere length was one of the initial biomarkers of aging. One of the first things we were able to say this is correlated with the aging process, and it was exciting because theoretically it made a lot of sense. These telomeres are essentially the very ends of our DNA. And every time we replicate our DNA, so as our cells replicate, which is happening all the time in our body, billions of times per day, right? That we start to lose pieces of that DNA just because we can't always replicate the very last bit of it. And so what happens is our body, in order to not lose very important genetic information, puts these little end caps on our DNA where we're expected to lose that DNA. And those are what we call these telomeres. And so the problem, though, is that whenever we continue to replicate our cells, sometimes we actually lose all of those telomeres and we start to get into DNA which is really important. And sometimes to prevent that sometimes that might cause negative outcomes. One of those is senescence, where the body says, we don't want to proliferate this DNA anymore because we're starting to lose important pieces of it. So let's pause it, right? And then you go to a senescent cell. And so that's called what we call this Hayflick limit. Whenever you finally reach that point. And so it can cause senescence, but it's been a biomarker of aging and been correlated to a lot of these negative outcomes. And so it's another one of those hallmarks. And so telomeres were what people were measuring before these epigenetic clocks came out. But these epigenetic clocks are really, I would say at this point, better at measuring the aging process than telomeres because they're more predictive of negative health outcomes. They're more correlated to negative health outcomes, and they're actually even more correlated to age, actually double the correlation to age than traditional telomere length testing. And so even with the tests that we do, we also even provide you the telomere length. So you can actually see where you're at there. And our version of telomere length is even better at predicting time till death, time to coronary heart disease, and time to congestive heart failure. And so it tends to be our marker of telomere length is even better than traditional telomere length. But that's also one of the things that we hopefully try and fix. There have been a lot of studies looking at, supplements which might increase telomere length, things that even nutritionally, like omega-3 fatty acids, have been shown to increase telomere length. So that's definitely a hallmark of aging. But right now, you can get all of that information from just these epigenetic clocks.
Perfect. Listen, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on another one.